Uh, Here's what I'm going to do. I'm a master at paint, and so I'm going to draw each team's logo, so that way it'll be perfect for where I think they're going to go. Does that sound good?
All right, go for it.
Okay, so the New England Patriots. I'm going to have to do this from memory too, so might not be
That
okay.
is
This
beautiful.
New England Patriots logo for Tom Brady. We've already talked about that. I think that's logical. We'll just move on from there. We have Jimmy Garoppolo. I think Jimmy G, no way he's leaving the 49ers.
I
And again,
agree with that. Unless they can get someone really marquee, I don't see him going anywhere. Um, and I think it's a list of like five guys that they would consider letting Jimmy Garoppolo go for. And I don't see any of those five guys going to the 49ers.
yeah, I agree. I just think, I mean, why are you going to like I didn't think I thought he got way too much heat for the Super Bowl performance. I mean, he missed a couple of throws late, but I thought he was fine. He just led his team to a Super Bowl. I just think that unless they get an offer they can't refuse, I think they're sticking with Jimmy G. And then we'll
Yeah, I
move
mean
on to
he was
oh, go
two
ahead.
yards away from hitting Emmanuel Sanders to win the whole thing. You know,
Yeah,
it was right there. So I don't
mhm.
fault Jimmy G for that.
Yeah, and even I mean, even go before that, he was inches away from hitting. I believe it was George Kittle for like just a quick first down, and that could have been the difference. So I mean,
Yeah.
it was a game of inches for sure. And then we'll move on to Jameis Winston. Here's the thing: I was thinking about Winston, and personally, I said I would keep him if I'm in Tampa Bay, but I think I just have like battered woman syndrome at this point, where I'm just gonna say I want to keep him forever. Uh, I do think that they're going to move on from him, and I was thinking, what about a team that maybe could use an entertaining quarterback, a team with not much of a fan base, and that is the San Diego Chargers. What if,
Los Angeles.
right? I should not be doing that 3 years into their move. Well, yeah, what about the
At this
Los
point, they might
Angeles
as well still
Chargers?
be at San Diego. This
Seriously,
is
probably more
this.
fans in San Diego.
Yeah,
Yeah,
pretty
go ahead.
much. So this is right on the money. So you said Mariota as the backup and Winston as the Chargers quarterback, and I wrote
Mhm.
down Mariota for Chargers, Winston as a backup, and
Gotcha.
yeah, either one really
Mhm.
makes sense. I can see Winston really jumping at that opportunity. You know, he's gonna whoever someone is the Chargers are going to throw money at somebody, and somebody is going to jump at that opportunity, and they're going to
Mhm.
live in LA. They're going to have you know a pretty decent roster, honestly, around them. Maybe besides the offensive line there, that is going to be really good around them. And not only that, once again, they're going to live in LA, and it's pretty much a clean slate because it's not really like you're going to get a lot of heat if you're bad because nobody watches the games anyways for LA Chargers. So who cares if you stink? I think it's a really good situation for Winston to really start over and revamp his career.
Yeah, I agree. And I think even with the offensive line, I mean, he's been playing with a subpar offensive line for most of his time in Tampa. It doesn't seem to. I mean, it affects him as much as it affects anybody, but he can move around more than you would think just watching his, some of his lowlights.
Yeah,
It makes sense to me. I think that he's going from one great wide receiving core to another one in the Chargers, and I think that again, I do think that the business side is going to come into play here. And Winston is the kind of guy who he's entertaining, and he's going to get people to want to watch for better or for worse. So I think that one makes sense. Moving on to Ryan Tannehill. So Tannehill is a guy who, if I'm the Titans, I'm keeping it. Again, that's one of those things where it just seems like Tennessee does not want to keep him. It seems like they've been looking to move on. So I'm going to say they will move on. And I think he's going to
interesting.
go to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I think that this
Ooh.
is maybe wishful thinking on my part a little bit, but I think that this just makes a ton of sense because, for one thing, I think that he's in that Bruce Arians system that loves to throw the ball deep. Tannehill has never had a problem with being an athlete. His problem, for the most part, has been staying healthy, and he'll make dumb decisions sometimes. But he's definitely going to be a far upgrade in the decision making from Jameis Winston. I think that he is kind of the quarterback for a Bruce Arians system. And I think that if he doesn't get tagged by Tennessee, why wouldn't he want to go to Tampa Bay? I mean, they have the offense that can work with him, have great receiving, to have a coach that fits his skill set perfectly. It just makes sense for me unless he gets tagged by Tennessee.
Yeah, I ended up writing Titans, and this was a team that I had franchise tag for.
Mhm.
At the end of the day, I think they might try and big game play here and try and get one of the bigger quarterbacks. but I do think they're going to strike out. Plus, they got to pay Derrick Henry.
Mhm.
And I think that with all of that, they're going to end up saying that why not just give Tannehill the prove it year, let him see what happens, and then we'll just go from there. That's the way I see it.
Yeah, I think that's what I would do. But also, what I've learned in doing this for a little over a year now is just because I would do something doesn't mean other teams would do it.
Yeah.
Sometimes there's decisions that seem obvious, don't get done. But that's just what I have. But that means that now the Tennessee Titans have a vacancy, and to me, there is no better fit than Teddy Bridgewater for the Tennessee Titans if they do not stick with Tannehill. I think that Bridgewater can fit that run heavy offense, throw on play action type team very well. It makes sense to me. What do you think?
I am all about Bridgewater to Tennessee. I actually think that'd be a really fun fit. I wrote Carolina in here for my team for Teddy Bridgewater. Um, but that actually makes a lot of sense to me too. I really like him in Tennessee. I think like I said, that's a perfect fit. If they bring back Henry and also have Bridgewater, that's a really dynamic duo, and that's a team that I can see being really successful because he essentially does everything that Tannehill did really well last year. He plays really well out of play action. He takes care of the ball, and he's pretty accurate with his throws. So he's kind of like an upgrade to Tannehill while also, maybe not costing as much as Tannehill after Tannehill's like.
I missed that ending a little bit, but I think I got most of what you're saying. Yeah, I think the price is probably the biggest thing. I think that with you're gonna have to pay Derrick Henry. You have about 50 million in cap space, and so if you want to give him one of those big running back deals, if you're also going to give Ryan Tannehill a franchise tag, that's a lot of money. You'd save money going with Bridgewater, so I could see Tennessee doing that, and I think it would make sense.
Definitely
So
agree with
now,
that. Yep.
yeah, okay. So now I'll move on to there's two that we mentioned Derek Carr earlier and also Matthew Stafford. I think both of these guys are going to stay. I think that the Lions, there's been some speculation. I don't know how I'm going to draw a line. This is going to be a difficult one, but okay, perfect. Okay, and then oh Jesus, what am I doing here? This is great podcasting, by the way, of just you listening to me
High quality
talk
content
about
I mean,
drawing in paint. But
I'll
go
go
ahead, say
in
something while
here.
I draw.
Yeah, I think Matthew Stafford makes a lot of sense to stay. I do think he's probably the one guy that I've seen, despite his injury history, that it would take a first round pick to trade. Um, and I don't see a lot of teams like even with the first round, like I don't see Chicago them trading him to Chicago. They're not going to trade him in the division.
Right.
I disagree with the mindset sometimes, but I don't think they're going to trade a franchise quarterback in the division. I don't think the Colts are going to give up a first round pick for him. I'm trying to go through the list ahead here. I could see maybe the Chargers giving up a first round pick for. No, they're not going to give up a first round pick because they have the sixth pick in the draft. They're going to take Tua. So I don't see I don't see I don't see a lot of teams giving up a first round pick for Stafford unless they're really desperate or if they lose someone like Brady, Dak for whatever reason. I don't see him going anywhere.
Yeah, the only scenario I can think of that maybe he would leave is if, let's say, Chase Young gets drafted, and then maybe you have an opportunity for like a Joe Burrow or a Tua, or maybe Tua is just there. Maybe you decide that's the best value you want to get Tua. I could see something like that happen, but I think they really just trade back and keep Stafford. That just makes sense to me. But what
Or
about
take
Derek
Okuda right
Carr?
there. Derek Carr,
What's that?
yeah, or just take Okuda there, honestly, if they don't find a deal good enough.
Right.
Derek Carr, I'm very much in on Las Vegas. That's going to take a while to get used to saying.
Yeah. I still haven't gotten used to San Diego. So
yeah, exactly. The Vegas Raiders, the Raiders, I guess. The Darth Vaders are. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense for Derek Carr. You know, I don't really know how I feel about this Raiders team. I guess you can say Gruden's kind of doing the right thing here. And he's kind of having the team in the right direction, the franchise in the right direction. I just don't feel like they're good. That's my problem. And I don't think this team's going to be good for a while. And I don't really see them wasting a lot of. I mean, I could see Gruden wanting to pull the trigger, but I don't really see this team wasting a lot of assets to get a quarterback when they're still probably a couple years away from competing against a team like Kansas City in their own division. I don't see them really pulling the trigger on that.
Yeah, I think one thing I actually like Derek Carr. I think he's underrated. Again, like I said earlier, he's on a reasonable contract. You can definitely work with that. I think their defense, if I remember correctly, it was third worst in DVOA last year. It was definitely not a great defense. I think some of the statistics don't look as bad because just the way that they, run heavy offense, a lot of running, a lot of short passes. So they sort of shorten the games, which don't give up as many yards, then not as many points. But I do think that losing Antonio Brown hurt them. I think that if they can get a true number one receiver, I think he was meant to be a big part of their offense. I also think Perfect was meant to be a big part of their defense. Granted, you could say, why are you putting a bunch of faith into a couple of head cases? But at the same time, it worked out well for Richie Incognito. So, you know, I definitely think they're at the very least, I think they could maybe compete, but we'll have to see what they do this offseason.
How did we not get a sitcom into that locker room with Incognito, Perfect, and Antonio Brown all on one roster? That's what I want to know.
Yeah, well, we had Hard Knocks, but then they
You should.
my oh, go ahead.
I was gonna say they should have just roomed those three, and like
Mhm.
during training, and Jacobs in there, and let Jacobs like get his first feel of the NFL, having to live with these three people. Be like, what did I just get myself into?
Yeah,
Oh
that would have been
man,
good. I could definitely
yeah.
see that.
I mean, in
Uh,
in all seriousness, though, I feel like Derek Carr can like. There's no reason that in a good offense or with a good team around him that Derek Carr can't be like an Alex Smith type. I don't think he's that bad. So I can agree that he is going to stay in Las Vegas in this one.
yeah, I agree. I think and one other thing, I kind of feel like with some of these teams, it's like you have something that's solid. Don't just try to hope. There's only a couple of quarterbacks in the NFL that are going to win you a championship. Most guys you have to build a team around. I think Derek Carr is the second category. You can win a championship with him. You're not going to win a championship because of him, but I still think he's worth keeping. And
Yep.
then another thing, I think this is a team we brought up is the Colts, and I actually think that they're just going to stick with Jacoby Brissett and not get another quarterback. That's what I think they're going to do. What do you think about that?
Interesting. Who? I actually forgot to write him down. I didn't write him and Andy Dalton down,
Well,
but
he does have a year
I
left on his contract, and so does Andy Dalton,
yeah.
but they're kind of you know, in that bubble of could go.
Yeah, most likely to go. Honestly, it seems like.
Hmm.
Or this one, I'm on the fence about. This Colts team is just so good. Like, how patient are they going to be with a guy who might actually be mediocre? Because this team is so talented. They got, a really good defense. They have the highest paid slot corner in the NFL or something like that with Kenny Moore. They have, great linebacking core. I don't see them. I don't know how patient they can be with this kind of roster. Obviously, the whole Andrew Luck situation derailed what this team could have been. But I think this team's actually primed to like with Bill O'Brien still in Houston, this team's kind of primed to actually take control of the AFC South because the Titans have so many free agent questions that if they did take control of the AFC South, they could be good for multiple years with this roster that they have put together.
Yeah, it's a division up for grabs for sure. It seems like every team in there is they don't have any dumpster fires, but they don't have any great teams either. And I do agree with what you're saying. I do think one key problem was that the receiving core got very injured towards the end of the season, and he didn't have a lot to throw to. And I think that it would make sense to move on from Jacoby Brissett to some degree, but I just think they're content with him. I think that everything I've heard, I think they like him, and I do think that again, I do think he's not terrible, but I do think you're right. I think he's mediocre.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I had one guy written down for the Colts that it looks like he's on your list, so I guess we'll get to him in a second. That I think makes a lot of sense. Um, But yeah, I mean, we'll see. But I just feel like that team can be really good really quickly if they have the right guy in place.
Yeah, no, I don't disagree whatsoever. I definitely think so. And now we'll move on to Andy Dalton, and thank God we have a team with a very easy to draw logo. Just see right there. I think it's going to the Bears. I think Chicago, uh, they're just a team right now where they are kind of desperate, actually, because I do think that the clock is running out on Matt Nagy, and he needs to, I do think there's a very real chance if they go 5-11 again, this could be his last year as a head coach for the Chicago Bears. And I think that Andy Dalton is definitely an upgrade from Mitchell Trubisky, no doubt about it. And I think they'd be willing to give maybe a third or possibly even a second, despite the fact they don't have much draft capital. They do have an extra pick. I believe it's an extra second round pick. Was that last year?
I'm not sure what their draft situation's like. I thought they had an extra pick.
Yeah, I think they do too. Yeah, so you can use that pick, get Andy Dalton, have a quarterback who I think they have more problems on that offense, no doubt about it. But I do think that can be an immediate upgrade from in the most important position in football.
Yeah, I actually like this pick. I think it makes a lot of sense. I had the Bears kind of striking out on a lot of the free agent quarterbacks available, and especially with Trubisky there, this gives Trubisky a real competition, but it also doesn't put him in a situation where it's like, crap, no, Brady's here. What do I do now? So he's really going to work for the job, and you might get the best out of Trubisky with the competition. I think that makes a lot of sense for him, and I think that makes a lot of sense for Dalton. It's kind of like, okay, this is your last shot, Andy. Go for it, and we'll see what happens. Because that's another team that is really good. They're probably one or two pieces away from potentially being a part of the conversation for the whole thing.
Yeah, no, and I think that it's one of those things too, where it's like, if I'm Ryan Tannehill, would I rather go to the team that has a great offense or a team that has a great defense, but not many offensive pieces? And so I do think that they're not going to be able to necessarily have their pick of the litter. I think they're going to have to, I think there's better options out there, but I do think it's an okay option. Quite frankly, I mean, their offense dropped from a top 10 offensive line to a bottom 10 offensive line in 1 year. They're going to have to improve their offense as a whole, not just the quarterback position, because I do think they could become a Jacksonville Jaguars situation where they go out and get a quarterback thinking that'll solve all their problems, and all it did was make their problems worse. But I like that pick, and now we'll move on to the last guy I have on this list. That's Cam Newton, and it's so hard to predict Cam Newton because we don't know how healthy he is. And if he's healthy, I see there being no way Carolina gets rid of him. And I'm just going to bank on that. So I'm going to go Carolina, but I can definitely see this one I don't feel strongly about.
The drawing or the pick?
Well, I don't feel strong about any of these drawings, but the pick is we'll go both. A beautiful thing.
Yeah.
Look at that. Is that the real logo, or is that just something I drew?
I can't tell them apart, honestly. So this is the one that this is the one that I had for the Indianapolis Colts. I don't think it's going to take a lot to get Cam Newton draft pick wise, just based on the situation he's in, the situation the team's in. I think it might take a third or fourth round pick to get Cam Newton, and when you can get a guy as talented as Cam Newton for a third or fourth round pick, this is the kind of situation that the Colts could actually thrive upon after losing Andrew Luck in an unfortunate situation. That really sounded like he died. Obviously, he just retired, but
right. Honestly, good situation for him, but yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I think Cam Newton to the Colts makes a lot of sense, and he's kind of a guy that can make the best thing about the Colts too is that's a really good offensive line. His shoulder will probably stay healthy most of the year, and that could be pretty dangerous with Cam Newton behind center. The Panthers, I feel like, are a team looking for a fresh start. I really like Rule as a coach, and I feel like with everything pretty much being new in the front office there, even the owners even fairly new there, I think it's time for a fresh start in Carolina. And I think I said Bridgewater to Carolina earlier. Yeah. So I think this is if they want a fresh start, this is the time to do it. And even if they decide to blow it up completely, there's a good quarterback class this year. There's a great quarterback class next year. If there's a time to really blow it up and start over, this is pretty much it, especially if you want to get yourself into the Trevor Lawrence sweepstakes. This might be a good time for Carolina to say, okay, it's time to hit the eject button.
Yeah, that makes sense. I could definitely see that happening with the Panthers of just we're going to do that. I do find that him going to the Colts, I find that very fascinating. That's something I hadn't really thought of too much, but I do think that can work because, again, going back to maybe their one weakness that they do have outside of quarterback is receivers. I don't know if that matters as much with Cam Newton, but again, it all just goes back to if Cam Newton is healthy, he's literally an MVP. But if he's not, I don't know if he can even be a starter. So definitely
Yeah.
a tough one.